Is When Harry Met Sally one of the greatest romantic comedies of all time? Is it the greatest romantic comedy of all time? The film was written by Nora Ephron, who also wrote Sleepless in Seattle. It was directed by Rob Reiner, who also directed This Is Spinal Tap, and stars Billy Crystal in probably his best film, and Meg Ryan in one of her best films. And Meg Ryan, for a time there, was considered the queen of romantic comedies. And the reason she was considered the queen of romantic comedies is because of this film. And I think that they tried to put her with other actors, and it didn't work so well. Because I think you need to have two actors in a romantic comedy who have a connection, who have charisma together, who work really well together, that you can believe that these people would be attracted to each other and you believe that they would be friends. And I think in this particular movie, you can really see that Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan are friends first. And that's important because of the actual theme of the movie. The theme of the movie is, can women and men be friends? And it's still a romantic comedy and it still works, but let's talk about that theme for a little bit. So Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan, they meet when they are young, and I think that they're finishing college or they're starting college. And they have this long ride from Chicago back to the New York area. Because, yeah, I think that they're finishing college and they're returning to New York. And it's like a 13-hour ride. And you can immediately tell what the character of Meg Ryan is. She's got like a plan. She's very organized. She's got like things that should be divided on this ride. It's kind of like a rideshare thing where they're driving back and Meg Ryan wants somebody to help drive the 13 hours. And they have this first conversation where Harry does not come off really well. He comes off like this obnoxious jerk. But you can see that there are sparks there. Like they work really well, those two actors together and those two characters together. They have this kind of repartee, which it feels really natural. Like, I don't know if you've ever met these people who just, like, you're just an observer of the situation. Maybe you're sitting at a bar or a cafe somewhere and you can kind of hear their conversation and you're like, yeah, those people really understand each other. They really kind of click together. And that's how it works in this situation. But the Harry, he brings up this idea that he has, going back to the theme of the movie, that men and women can't be friends. And Sally is kind of like, she's not devastated because she has kind of been irritated by this guy for the last 13 hours. But Harry says, oh, we can't be friends. So she's like, oh, well, that's a bummer because I don't really know anybody in New York. And he's like, okay, bye. And they just leave, which is good for the story of the movie because then 5 years later, they meet again. And Harry maybe doesn't really recognize Sally very much. And Sally recognizes him. And the good thing, one of the reasons why the film works is because it actually mirrors real life. So there's a couple and they have different memories of their time together. And if you've ever been in a relationship, you know that the guy thinks one thing happened in a certain way and the woman or the other partner thinks that thing happened in a certain way. So the memories of their interactions are told from we see it in like a third person perspective, but they keep telling it in like their own perspective. So Harry and Sally meet again, and so Sally says, "Oh, you said when we met the last time that men and women can't be friends." And then Harry's like, "No, I didn't say that." So they basically come to the conclusion that men and women can't be friends again, and then they leave each other again in this other kind of awkward thing. So 5 years, and that's because Sally at that time has a good relationship and Harry is about to be married. So fast forward another 5 years when they meet again, and Harry is going through a sudden and difficult divorce, and Sally also is going through this breakup, which gets, in the beginning, it seems very simple breakup, but it gets more and more complicated as, maybe not complicated, like it seems like, oh yeah, Sally's fine, but then it turns out Sally is not fine with this. And I think that another reason this film works so well is because the characters, they grow and they develop. And so you see that Harry's character, he kind of develops. In the beginning, he's sort of this cynical guy, and he doesn't necessarily believe that there is hope and there is optimism in the world. And he falls in love with this woman named Helen, not Sally. He falls in love with Helen, and Helen breaks his heart, and then he has to try and like recover the pieces and become like a more mature person. And for Sally, she has everything under control, and she needs to kind of like, I mean, it's not bashed over your head like it is in other movies. It's very, very subtle, Sally's progression, but she does have a progression as well. And anyway, in the last, so they meet in the beginning of the movie, and then 5 years later they meet again, and then another 5 years later they meet again. And because they're both at this point in their lives where they don't really feel like being with each other, they decide to, or anyone, not just each other, like Harry is devastated because of his divorce, and Sally is going through some things as well. They decide that they're going to try this friendship thing, and they legitimately become friends. You know, Harry says that he can talk to her and he can get the female perspective, and the film doesn't show this because it's about, you know, the relations between men and women, but you imagine that they don't just talk about the relations between men and women. They probably talk about like politics and culture and sports and all of that. And you can see that later because so Sally and Harry keep dating other people, and one of the people that Sally dates takes her to a baseball game, and Harry's like, she doesn't like baseball. Why did he take her to a baseball game? And, you know, you can see that they know these kind of like intimate details of each other's lives. And at one point, Sally says something like, you know, I'm really glad that we didn't sleep to each other in the beginning, because then you wouldn't lie to me that you have to go clean your fireplace when I know that you don't have a fireplace. And it's all of these moments that kind of build their relationship, and you can see their relationship feels natural. It develops over time. And the other thing is that there's none of these tropes that romantic comedies kind of rely on, which are so irritating. So the first trope really irritating that romantic comedies rely on is this simple misunderstanding that could be explained if the characters would bother to talk to each other. Now, in this film, I'm gonna like spoil it a little bit if you haven't seen it, but in this film, there is as I said, they're friends, and they have this moment where Sally is really devastated by her former relationship, and she feels really, really vulnerable. And Harry is there, and he understands her. He understands what she's going through. And it's actually like this really, really great scene where she's crying. And he's really being supportive, right? It's like legitimately, honestly being supportive. And I think that doesn't come through in a lot of movies, especially romantic comedies. The support is really shallow, right? And then they end up sleeping together after this. And we can talk about the fallout, what happens later, but there's not really a misunderstanding. They have feelings after this, right? Both of them have feelings, and they're having difficulty processing them. And so Harry leaves, and it becomes like this awkward situation for a couple of weeks. But it's not a misunderstanding. It's like they are dealing with emotions, big emotions, right? And that's why they're having trouble communicating. It's not because, one person misheard something and then misinterpreted and blah, blah, blah. It's really because of the feelings that happen naturally out of those characters. All right, so yeah, that is the biggest trope that is in this film, but it's subverted by the characters acting in a normal way. So I can imagine, so their progression from kind of being these strangers who run into each other and kind of have indifferent or if not hostile feelings to each other, to becoming friends, and then to falling in love, makes perfect sense, right? These are characters, as I said, that have like this connection, that have this sort of interaction and charisma together, and they become friends, and then they fall in love. And I think, yeah, that's the other trope that I wanted to talk about, which is this this thing that, like, I think that I could make like a list, and probably you've seen lists of tropes in romantic comedies, but I think one is that they always have like these sort of exotic jobs, and one person is this way and another person is this way. No, they're kind of normal people who live in New York, and they kind of like, they randomly come across each other sometimes, and that's how their relationship progresses. It's not like he is at a social level much higher than she is, or vice versa. It's not like he has like this crazy job and she has this crazy job. No, they're like people who have the same kind of jobs, and they run in the same circles. The story, going back to the theme of this story, which is the big question that Harry says as a fact, a fundamental fact about human relationships, is that men and women can't be friends, is that it shows that they can be friends. Because what happens is that Harry and Sally do become friends, and they do fall in love, but the reason that the fact that they're falling in love is so dangerous for them both is that they don't want to lose the friendship, right? The friendship is the more important thing for them than the love thing, And it does have like these big romantic moments. There is this one point where Harry has been trying to contact Sally for like a couple of weeks so that they can talk about what happened. And he's running to this place where they had both been invited to this party, and she went and he didn't. And so he's running to this this place, and he runs in with his it's like a New Year's party, so like everybody's really, really elegant, and he runs in with normal clothes, and she says something like, oh, you can't make like this big declaration on New Year's and expect me to forgive you. And he says something like, I love you. And I realized that I loved you. And I wanted to talk to you right now because when you love somebody, you don't want to wait to tell them that you love them. You don't want to waste the rest of your life. And it is like this big kind of cliched romantic comedy moment, but also it's like a normal human moment. And it's like, it doesn't matter that it's New Year's. I don't care about that. I just wanted to see you right now. And she's like, oh, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. But she doesn't really hate him. So it's really, really, really great moment. And back to the theme of the movie. Yeah, they're friends, and yeah, they fall in love. But what's great is that they have other friends in this movie, and those other friends are not cliches or not stereotypes. Like Harry has a friend, and they talk about their problems, and they go play. They're like at a batting cage together, and so Harry and Sally's development of their relationship is seen from their perspective and their friend's perspective. And so even Harry and Sally try and set their best friends up together because they think it would work. Basically, Harry and Sally's best friends fall in love with each other as well because they're very compatible. And Sally's best friend is played by Carrie Fisher, which is great. She's a great actress. Was a great actress. So Sally is trying to set her best friend up with Harry, and Harry is trying to set his best friend up with Sally because, they're friends and they want the best for each other, and they think, hey, this is the best person I know in my life. You'll like them. And they don't end up liking like the person that they're meant to like. They actually like each other. So Sally's best friend and Harry's best friend get together, and they have a relationship which is more immediate than Harry and Sally's relationship is. But what's great about that is that you can tell that even though I think his name is Alan and I think her name is Anne. So I think even though Alan and Anne, they don't go for Harry and Sally, they go for each other. And because they have such strong relationships with these two people, they actually become friends as well. So Alan and Sally, maybe they're not best friends, maybe they're not like friends like Harry and Sally are, they're still friends. So the movie answers its own question. Can men and women be friends? Yes, they can be friends. And in fact, if they want to have a good relationship with each other, they need to be friends. So I think from that aspect, the romantic comedy thing is really, really great. This is like the best romantic comedy ever. Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise, I guess. But yes, the answer to that question is yes, it is the best romantic comedy of all time. But there are some other things to talk about as well, because people kind of focus on the story and the acting, but I think another thing that we should focus on is the directing. And maybe it's part of the script too, but the way that the movie is set up is that you have these random interviews that are spliced through Harry and Sally's story. And they're basically these older couples who are telling the story of how they met. And I don't know if those are real people. It feels like they're real people. But again, I think that Rob Reiner was one of the first people to have this sort of mockumentary style. So maybe they're not real people, but how it works is like it's this framing device, because all of these stories about how people met are completely different, right? You have like arranged marriages. You have people who kind of grew up in the same neighborhood, but then they meet each other thousands of miles away. And, you have like love at first sight kind of thing. And so Harry and Sally, they're actually interviewed at the end of the movie, and they give you basically what happened, but from their own perspectives in like a few sentences. And it shows you, and as again, I said this a few times, it shows you how great the movie is because these are real characters. They're believable characters. They're really fun to watch. And there's none of this sort of fake conflict for the sake of making a fake conflict. They do have this one moment where there is kind of a possibility that their relationship would end, but I think it's a natural progression from the story, right? From the story and from the characters and what they believe and how they act together. So makes perfect sense. It's a perfect movie, I would say. Like almost perfect. There might be like one little thing that I don't quite understand and I don't think is necessary. Because in the end of the movie at the interview, Harry says that they have known each other for 12 years. So if you do the math, actually it means that they were friends for like 2 years, and which kind of makes sense because Sally talks about like she's 32 or something. I don't think I don't think that matters, like saying the actual dates. And like the reason I even bring it up is because I think it feels, at least for me, that they have a much stronger relationship than people who've only known each other for 2 years, like 5, 6 years, 7 years. I think it's closer to 6 years or 7 that they're friends rather than like 2 years. But that's a really, really small thing, such a small thing to criticize. It's not even probably a valid criticism. The other great thing about this movie is that it's funny. And it's funny in a way that it's not like I tell you a joke and then you laugh and you're like, oh, he's so smart. He told me a joke. It's funny because it happens out of like natural situations, right? So I can think of like 3 classic examples. And I think like 3 examples of great humor in the movie. And if you know anything about this movie, you know the first one that I'm going to talk about is this great scene where Harry and Sally are like in this deli or restaurant or cafe or something, and they're having breakfast or dinner or something. They're eating and they're having like a normal conversation where Harry is bragging about what a great how great he is at making love, and he's like, yeah, I would know if somebody is faking. And then Sally, which is a great scene, she does this like impromptu fake orgasm performance, and everybody in the cafe is like watching her. And then this old lady says at the end, maybe not old, like older middle-aged lady says something like, I'll have what she's having. Great funny scene. Really, really funny scene. And of course, it's the scene that people remember from this movie because it is such a great comedic genius scene, and Meg Ryan is great in it, and Billy Crystal is great in it, and all the extras are great in it. But the other great thing about the scene is that it shows the development of Sally's character as well, because earlier in the movie, they go into, like when they're traveling from Chicago to New York, they go into this cafe as well, and they're having sort of like an animated conversation. Like, you know, when you get like really passionate about what you're talking about and you realize you're talking a little bit too loud and people are listening to you. And she looks around and people are looking at her and she's like, oh my God. And she seems so embarrassed, like she's going to die of embarrassment. And then you flash forward like 10 years and she doesn't have any problem performing a fake orgasm in the middle of a cafe or a restaurant and attracting all of the attention of people around because she knows what she's doing. Like, she could fake it like really quietly, but no, she's faking it really loudly, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful scene. The next one that I wanted to talk about is when right before Sally and Harry get together and they have their moment of weakness and they sleep together. Right before that, there is like I'm sorry, Sally. She's crying because the man that she really, really loved decided to get engaged, and she wanted to get engaged with him and have a family. And basically the thing is, like, she thought that it's just because they had different life paths that they didn't want the same thing. Like, he didn't want kids, he didn't want a marriage, he didn't want all of that, and she did. And then he gets married. So then she's like, wait a minute, it wasn't that we didn't want different things, that we wanted different things. It's that he didn't want me, right? And that's devastating for a person, right? You know, I can understand how she feels. You can probably understand how she feels if you've ever had a failed relationship. So she's crying about this, and Harry is there being the supportive friend. And then they do this like thing where Sally is like, oh, I'm almost 40. And he's like, what do you mean you're almost 40? It's like 8 years from now. And she's like, no, but it's different. You know, Charlie Chaplin, it's different for guys. Charlie Chaplin had a baby when he was 85 or whatever it was. And Harry says, yeah, but he couldn't pick the baby up. And Sally is like laughing, but then she thinks about it and she starts crying again. Oh, so great. So great. Just great comedic timing. And I think, like, I understand why the orgasm scene is more popularly remembered, but I think that scene is much funnier because it's like, it shows, and again, it works with the movie because it shows their character, right? It shows that Meg is really hurting, not Meg, why do I keep saying that? It shows that Sally is really hurting about the situation, and she's really in a bad place emotionally, but then Harry can still make her laugh, and that's why they are friends, and that's why they're falling in love. But then he says something which is pretty dark, and so she laughs because it's funny, and then she's like, oh, that's pretty dark, I'm gonna cry again. And then you see it goes all the way back to the beginning of the movie, whereas Harry is like this cynical guy and doesn't believe in anything, and he's still cynical. He's still the same guy, but he's developed and he's matured, right? So, such a great scene. Really great scene. And the third thing that's kind of funny is where they're playing charades, and Alan, so basically Sally is up there and she's drawing, it's not charades, it's like Pictionary. She's drawing like a baby, and the word she has is like baby talk. And I forget exactly what Alan says, but he guesses something like, oh, baby alien prattle, blah, blah, blah. And then, so they finish the little round, and then they ask Sally, oh, what was your thing? And Sally says, oh, it's like baby talk. And then Alan's like, baby talk is not like like he's arguing about the technical details of what's happening. And he's like, oh, baby talk is not some normal expression, which actually, yeah, it is. But anyway, and then Harry says something like, yeah, and baby prattle alien thing is a normal thing. Oh, that's also funny. Because What I like about the humor in this romantic comedy is that it comes out of the situation. It comes out of these characters. It comes out of who they are. Even though Billy Crystal, really funny guy, and Meg Ryan, really funny also. But it doesn't, it's not like somebody wrote the joke on the page and it came out. And it's not even like a joke that you make when you're improvising or something. It's that the characters created those situations, even though, of course, they're written, right? Nora Ephron wrote them to do that way, to be that way. But you know what I mean? Like, I think there are movies where it's like action, 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 line, funny line, ha 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 ha. Let's laugh because that's funny, and then go back to action, 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 action. And this is more like character being character, character saying something that character would say, and then character being funny because character is actually a charismatic individual who has a sense of humor. You know, you see the difference? It's the best romantic comedy of all time, and it is one of the best movies of all time. Like, for this channel, I watch not bad movies. I mean, sometimes really bad movies, but I also watch movies that are considered to be one of the greatest movies of all time, and this movie, legitimately, I don't know why it's not on more lists of the greatest movies of all time. Like, if I was making a list, this would definitely be on it, man. Like, I think it's well acted, it's brilliantly directed and written. There's nothing wrong with this movie. Nothing seriously wrong with this movie. So, if you haven't seen the movie because you think it's a certain way, or you don't like romantic comedies, I think that this is like a legitimately good movie, not just being, like, it's legitimately a great movie, not just legitimately the best romantic comedy of all time. I'll say it that way. All right, if you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel. Please leave a comment. Thanks. Bye-bye.